In the summer of 2025, the world's attention is fixed on Washington. The city buzzes with anticipation, its iconic buildings standing as silent witnesses to a new chapter in global politics. News crews gather on the White House lawn, and the Capitol's flags flutter in the warm breeze, signaling a nation at the center of a storm. President Trump's new tariffs dominate headlines, making the U.S. trade war seem like the only global economic story. Every major network covers the escalating rhetoric, and newspapers run bold headlines about rising tensions and retaliatory measures. The world watches as the U.S. flexes its economic muscle, and the drama of tariffs and counter-tariffs unfolds in real time. But beneath this noisy surface, a quieter, more complex struggle is unfolding. While the spotlight remains fixed on Washington, the real game is being played elsewhere, in the shadows of global commerce. Ships move silently through foggy harbors and factory floors hum with activity largely unnoticed by the public eye. Away from the spotlight, China and the European Union are locked in a subtle but consequential battle for economic dominance. Their rivalry is less about fiery speeches and more about strategic maneuvering, as each side seeks to shape the future of global trade and technology. This hidden conflict is fought with regulations, industrial policies, and strategic moves, far from the public eye. Behind closed doors, officials draft new rules, negotiate complex agreements, and quietly adjust policies that will ripple across continents. It's a chess match, not a shouting match, involving electric vehicles, French brandy, and rare earth minerals. Each move is calculated, each product a potential pawn or queen in a much larger game. The stakes are high, as these industries represent the future of energy, luxury, and technology. The EU and China use nuanced tools, anti-dumping investigations, subsidies, and market access restrictions. These are not the blunt instruments of tariffs, but precise levers that can tip the balance of entire sectors. Inspectors scrutinize shipments, and officials debate the fine print of trade law, all in pursuit of an edge. Their actions are less visible, but the stakes are just as high for industries and economies worldwide. The livelihoods of millions depend on these decisions, and the ripple effects reach from factory floors to financial markets, shaping the fate of workers and investors alike. To focus only on the US is to miss half the story. The realignment of global trade is a multi-front contest, with each player maneuvering for advantage. Trade routes shift, new alliances form, and the rules of the game are rewritten in boardrooms and government offices around the world. The global order is being reshaped by two conflicts, not one. As leaders gather at summits and negotiators hammer out deals, the world's economic architecture is quietly but fundamentally changing. The outcomes of these negotiations will set the stage for decades to come. The outcome of this quiet war will define economic realities for billions long after today's headlines fade. As stock markets surge and cities light up across continents, the true impact of these silent battles will be felt in the opportunities, challenges, and choices facing people everywhere. In the end, it's not just about who wins the loud war, but who masters the quiet conflict shaping our shared future. Trade wars aren't new. For centuries, nations have used tariffs and trade barriers as tools to protect their economies, assert power, and gain leverage over rivals. From the Smoot-Hawley tariff of the 1930s to the trade disputes of the late 20th century, history is filled with examples of countries clashing over commerce. But today's trade wars are uniquely disruptive, unfolding in a world more interconnected than ever before. The stakes are higher, and the ripple effects reach every corner of the globe, from bustling cities to rural heartlands. After decades of globalization and freer trade, economic nationalism is making a powerful comeback. Countries are reasserting control over their borders and industries, challenging the idea that open markets always benefit everyone. President Trump's administration claims tariffs are needed to protect American jobs and correct what they see as unfair trade practices by other nations. The message is clear: America first, even if it means upending decades of economic policy. In July 2025, sweeping new tariffs hit global headlines, sending shockwaves through markets and boardrooms alike. A 15% tariff was slapped on all Chinese imports, affecting everything from electronics to clothing, raising prices for businesses and consumers. European luxury cars faced a steep 25% tariff, making them far more expensive for American buyers and threatening jobs on both sides of the Atlantic. The official justification: national security and fixing trade imbalances. Leaders argue these measures are necessary to defend domestic industries and restore fairness to global trade. These moves are designed to force negotiations on America's terms, pressuring trading partners to make concessions or face economic pain. But other countries retaliate, creating a cycle of tit-for-tat tariffs. China targets U.S. agriculture, hitting farmers who rely on exports for their livelihoods. The EU prepares its own list of American goods to target, from bourbon to motorcycles, escalating the standoff and deepening the divide. The result? Disrupted supply chains, rising costs, and global uncertainty. Businesses struggle to adapt, and consumers feel the pinch as prices climb. The era of predictable, rules-based trade is over. Institutions that once kept disputes in check now struggle to keep up with the pace of change. Economic policy is now a weapon, wielded in a high-stakes game of brinkmanship. The world is on edge, watching and waiting for the next move. The new age of tariffs is chaotic, confrontational, and deeply destabilizing. Markets swing wildly and uncertainty becomes the new normal. The global economy is entering uncharted territory, where old rules no longer apply and the future is anything but certain. The China-EU trade relationship was once a win-win. Europe brought technology and capital, China provided labor and market scale. But over the past decade, China's ambitions have grown. State-led initiatives like Made in China 2025 put Chinese firms in direct competition with Europe's industrial champions. The EU now sees China as a systemic rival, not just a partner. Accusations of unfair subsidies, dumping, and forced technology transfers have soured relations. Brussels has launched anti-dumping investigations. China has erected regulatory hurdles for European firms. Mistrust now defines their interactions. The current escalation is the result of years of growing rivalry and diverging interests. The quiet conflict is the culmination of a long, simmering economic struggle. Recent months have seen China-EU tensions erupt into direct action. The EU slapped tariffs on Chinese electric vehicles, citing unfair subsidies. China retaliated with an anti-dumping probe into European brandy, targeting France. This precision retaliation aims to divide EU member states and send a political message. China also hinted at restricting rare earth mineral exports, reminding Europe of its strategic vulnerability. Each side targets the other's economic pressure points: cars, brandy, critical minerals. The conflict is moving beyond tariffs into strategic industrial policy. The impact on key industries is growing louder by the day. US tariffs aren't just a bilateral issue. They're inflaming the China-EU rivalry and sending shockwaves through the entire global economy. What started as a move to protect American industries has quickly spiraled into a much larger, more complex problem that affects countries far beyond the US and China. With the US market now harder to access, Chinese goods are flooding into Europe at an unprecedented rate, intensifying competition for European manufacturers and putting pressure on local businesses to keep up with cheaper imports. EU policymakers are under mounting pressure to protect their own markets and industries, leading to calls for new tariffs and stricter regulations. This, in turn, escalates their own conflict with Beijing, as both sides dig in and prepare for a prolonged trade battle. The EU now finds itself caught in a difficult position, torn between US demands for solidarity and the threat of Chinese retaliation, which weakens its ability to negotiate effectively on the world stage. Germany, for example, is a major exporter and now faces tariffs from both the US and China. This double hit makes German leaders hesitant to support strong EU action against China, fearing further economic pain for their own industries. The result is a fractured Europe, with member states divided over how to respond. Trade disputes deepen, unity weakens, and the space for compromise shrinks, making it harder to find common ground. America's tariffs have become a global disruptive force, not just a US problem. They're upending established trade routes and forcing countries to rethink their economic strategies. These policies are pushing rivals into direct confrontation and making international cooperation on trade and economic issues nearly impossible. As trust between nations erodes, the fallout is global, not just transatlantic. Every region is feeling the impact, from Asia to Africa to the Americas. The world trading system is under unprecedented strain, with markets reacting to uncertainty and businesses struggling to adapt to new realities. The ripple effects are being felt everywhere, From delayed shipments and empty store shelves to rising prices and economic anxiety, the consequences of America's tariffs are truly global, reshaping the world economy in ways we're only beginning to understand. Trade wars hit home in very real ways. Tariffs raise prices on everyday goods, electronics, cars, food, squeezing family budgets. Export-dependent industries face falling sales and job losses, from German auto workers to French vineyard workers. Uncertainty chills business investment, slowing economic growth. Small and medium-sized businesses are especially vulnerable, lacking resources to adapt. Consumer choice narrows, and innovation suffers as competition declines. The trade war isn't just about governments, it's about livelihoods and opportunities for millions. The quiet EU-China conflict, amplified by US tariffs, is eroding economic security worldwide. The human cost is mounting, even if it's not always front-page news. The consequences are felt from showrooms to supermarkets. Financial markets are in turmoil as trade tensions escalate. Stock markets swing wildly with every new tariff or threat. Investors flee to safe havens, driving up the US dollar and hurting American exports. Automakers, tech firms, and agricultural giants are hit hardest, facing falling profits and disrupted supply chains. Currency markets are volatile, adding complexity for global businesses. The fear of a global slowdown is real. Major organizations warn trade wars could tip the world into recession. What starts as a targeted tariff can trigger market chaos and threaten global stability. The economic nervous system is on high alert. All eyes are on Brussels as the EU-China summit approaches. What was once routine is now a high-stakes negotiation with global consequences. The best-case scenario, a compromise that de-escalates the conflict and restores market confidence. But deep divisions make failure just as likely, risking immediate escalation. More tariffs, more export controls, and deeper economic blocs. The summit's outcome will shape the future of global trade. Success could revive diplomacy. Failure could accelerate fragmentation and recession. The stakes couldn't be higher. This is a critical test for both sides, and for the world. The next chapter of the trade war will be written in Brussels. It's tempting to focus on America's loud trade war, but the EU-China conflict is just as crucial. This quiet struggle is about who will set the rules for the global economy, free markets or state-led capitalism. The battle over technology and industry will shape growth and innovation for decades. The post-war international system is fragile, the WTO is sidelined, and power politics are back. The upcoming summit is a crossroads. Will leaders choose compromise or deeper division? The answer will affect jobs, prices, and prosperity worldwide. The loud war grabs headlines, but the quiet war may define our future. The world is watching, because we all have a stake in what happens next.